Hello, everyone. Welcome to Filmmakers and Their Films, Part 16, The Experience of Political Change. With us, we have a well known critic and film author, Raghavendra, sir. Over to you, sir.
Okay, thank you, Mohammed. Okay, now we talk of political change. We're talking about political change, right? Now, political change becomes visible only when there's a structural change, right? There has to be a structural change. A change of regime, is not a political change. So the question is that when cinema has to portray political change, one government goes, the liberal government goes, the conservative government comes, the democratic government goes, Republican comes. Okay, even if there is a, shall we say, a fairly, there has to be structural change. There has to be some churning at the bottom, right? So the question is, how is that portrayed, and what are the various kinds of political change? Now, there's a lot of theorizing on the nature of political change. What are the kinds of political change portrayed? But my basic thing is, for political change to be convincing, for it to have a work as art, okay, it has to be something which the artists have some, shall we say, recognition of, knowledge of, experience of. It's necessary, right? Which is why I've used this thing of experience of political change. Um, so I've picked, for example, in the French Revolution. If you take something like the French Revolution, now Dickens wrote this novel called *A Tale of Two Cities*, 100 years after the French Revolution. The question is, would that be 100 years after the revolution? Would that actually give you a picture of the French Revolution, except as some kind of fiction? Would there be some real experience of that thing? Okay, we're not very sure. I don't think so. And Tolstoy's, for example, if you look at Tolstoy's War and Peace, it was somewhat older than Tolstoy, probably 100 years before Tolstoy, right? Maybe no, maybe a century, less than a century before Tolstoy. But somehow, since this thing was, the time gap was not so much, he's able to make a very convincing picture. And I don't think that when we see Tolstoy's Anna Karenina, which is contemporary to Tolstoy, and War and Peace, which is say 60, 70 years earlier, we don't see much difference in the way, the kind of lives portrayed, right? We tend to see both of them together, right? Here I picked four movies. Okay, four movies out of which the first is set, I think, in the 18th century, 17th century, 18th century, about colonization. It's made from a theoretical perspective, what colonization would mean, which is this movie called Kemada. I hope a large number of you have seen this movie. But I don't know. I think it's a cut version. There's a cut version and there's a full length version. If it's 2 hours and 12 minutes, also it's okay. It's a longer version. That's better. The other one, which is in English, is a much shorter version. Like, I would recommend that you see the longer version. Again, this is more a kind of theoretical reconstruction of colonization and this and that. Okay, well, I'll talk about that first. Okay, I'll talk about that a little later. Okay. Now, revolutionary change is often theorized about by Marxists and then taken up by the filmmakers on that basis. But the problem is that you won't get this thing of, an actual picture of the change, as I said. Okay, if you look at, for example, it was not that there was no experience of Marxist-driven political change in the world. But the point is that Marxist-driven political change came about in 1917, 1918 in Soviet Russia, right? At that particular time, what they used was the entire thing of cinema to further the same project of political change. So what happened was, it became kind of, rather than being artistically truthful, they became propagandist. You can look, for example, at something like Eisenstein. He's a great filmmaker. There's no doubt that Eisenstein is a great filmmaker. But October, it's propaganda. You don't really get a close picture of. It's supposedly based on 10 Days That Shook the World. John Reed, I think, 10 Days That Shook the World. But it's not really. It's more like propaganda. Okay, sort of truthful reconstruction. For this reason, we do not get truthful reconstructions, truthful accounts of either the Soviet Revolution or of the Chinese Revolution. Chinese Revolution, with Zhang Yimou, when he talks about the Cultural Revolution, he saw the Cultural Revolution, but you will not get a proper account. it's too soft, it's too, shall we say, accommodating, and it doesn't really give you anything like a convincing picture of the cultural revolution. Cultural revolution, thousands died, millions died, okay? I mean, the number of people who died in Mao's political experiments, I think it was 70 million or so of starvation. 2-3 years, 2% of the population died during Great Leap Forward, and Cultural Revolution was also very bloody. But it's presented by somebody like Zhang Yimou as something fairly benign in some way. Humiliation and that sort of thing. Jailing, humiliation, exile, but no real violence in that sense. Okay? Okay. One of the things, another thing is post-colonial society. So now most post-colonial society need to, their struggles have to be inflated in some way. After all, what does a post-colonial society do? It has to build a nation, right? When it builds up a nation, when they have to create this sense of national consciousness, they have to build up some mythology around their freedom struggles, etc. Now look at our own freedom struggle. Look at our own freedom struggle in India. What kind of truth have we got about the freedom struggle in India? Does anybody know? I mean, it's, for example, they talk about the salt march, of Gandhi's salt march, right? Do you know that after the salt march, the salt tax was not removed, not repealed by the British, right? It continued. They talk about it as if it was a great success, but the basic thing, nothing happened out of that salt march. So there's a huge amount of myth making, and you don't really get any kind of thing of political change, right? This is that nationalist agenda in post-colonial societies somehow overrides any effort to present a truthful picture of what happened. Okay, even shall we say a first-person account, shall we say an honest account of what is happening, you won't get such a thing. Probably you may get a little. If you want to find out something about you may get something in the British archives. People are not involved in the thing, not Indians, some foreigners who were at that time who were able to give. I don't know if such things are available. There would be in some way. You'll have to really investigate that, find what happened, that sort of thing. The mutiny, for instance, of 1857, what happened, you'll have to get accounts from somewhere else, from outsiders who had nothing to gain or lose. Okay. Political collapses, okay, provide more truthful pictures. But even here, what happens is a country moves from one form of government to another form of government. If you take the collapse of the wall in Berlin, the collapse of the Berlin Wall, what you will find is that it moved, the unification of Germany moved from communism to democracy or capitalism or whatever. So there is a tendency to look at the past, with some kind of horror, and that horror is calculated. If you look at something like, what is that thing of Goodbye Lenin, The Lives of Others. If you look at these movies, you will find that the lives of others, okay, it's the basic, the kind of sentiment expressed there is, thank God we are out of this situation, this system. And you're laughing at the past without examining where you are in the present. It's not, there's too much optimism about the present. You have to look at it more dispassionately. So I find that all these guys who sort of came out of East Germany to West Germany to make movies, there was no West Germany and East Germany then. Once they they started making movies, okay, about the horrible past. It seemed to sort of, win them. It's like Shashi Tharoor's account of colonialism, okay. He doesn't answer so many questions about colonialism. The British did this, the British did that. In fact, his thing is, you must give us, what is it called, reparations or something, some 1 rupee or something, reparations. Even that 1 rupee, 50 paisa will have to go to Pakistan, okay. It's not, something like that, right? It's a nationalist, it's a complete nationalist project that these people are doing, okay. So the question is that in the depiction of the fall of communism, in that depiction which is represented today, you have people like, the Germans, the person who did, I think, Wolfgang, who did Goodbye Lenin? I forget what's Wolfgang Becker? Yeah, Wolfgang Becker, I think, did Goodbye Lenin. The Lives of Others is made by somebody else, some Thomas Mack or something. I forget the name of that person. Okay. Now, Poland and Germany are churning out films which can be called propagandist in this way. Cold War, for instance. Okay. Is also some kind of propagandist thing where you're looking at the past, from where are you looking at the past? Okay, you're looking from what you think is the condition of satisfaction about the past, right? The present is fine. We are living in fine conditions. We are going on looking at the past to figure out, and that's not acceptable at all. Okay. Now the point is, you have to take a position today. Some kind of discontent with the present in some way can only make you, it must be obvious discontent, which is why I've picked Balabanov, I think, for this thing of Cargo 200. I don't know if how many of you saw Cargo 200. It's savage is the word I would describe that. It's savage, okay, and that kind of thing, and it's told from a position, when the glasnost was over, and there was still dissatisfaction because of Yeltsin's, what Yeltsin did, right? People died in their thousands, okay, because of Yeltsin's embracing of the free market, what was called the shock therapy and all that, okay? So there was a lot of dissatisfaction. So it's made from that. Balabanov is not like Zviagintsev. See, Zviagintsev is another filmmaker, okay? He is sort of pitching at film festivals in the West, right? Okay, film festivals in the West have a certain agenda. Whatever movie comes out of there will be shown in these film festivals like Venice, Cannes. If you look at these festivals, it is as if you have to go with the preconceived thing of fulfilling whatever their expectations are. You go from India, you have to fulfill expectations. You come from Iran, you have to fulfill. Iran is a totalitarian regime, okay? So since it's so-called totalitarian regime, okay, you have to show that freedom of expression is not there. The same thing with China, you'll have to do that. You'll have to do Russia, you'll have to do that. If you show South Korea, for instance, since it's a democratic and a capitalist economy, South Korea, when you have a satire like that, what is that thing which won the prize? South Korea, that Parasite, right? He twists around Parasite. He changes the ending in some way to make it very, softens it up. It's quite a nasty piece of filmmaking. But there's a deliberate softening, as if, the Western film people will not accept South Korea in a very nasty way. You have to show that there is hope, that in a capitalist thing, there is some hope. So there's actually, Western film festivals, there is actually... Okay, thank you, Mohammed. Okay, thank you, Mohammed. Okay. Yeah, this is the way of political, as I said. So the question is that this entire, so the thing of Balabanov is very different. And this, as I said, this Zviagintsev does this. He's catering to Western film festivals. He's doing a certain thing. There's only one film of his which in my opinion, is a good movie, which I really like. No, he's a master in terms of form and all that. But there's one film of his which I particularly liked. It's called, I think, Elena. That Elena is a good film. But even there, he brings in certain elements which are obviously there for Western audiences. Okay. Balabanov is not like that. Okay. So the films chosen here, Burn is about decolonization from a theoretical utopian perspective. Xala is a satire on postcolonial society. The Xala is interesting because it's made by somebody who's aware of postcolonialism. At the same time, he's a radical and he's anti. So he's more or less in the same Balabanov position. He's dissatisfied with the position. He's making a satire on postcolonial society. Somebody in India could also make, I think, post-colonial society, though I don't know how they would go about it, at least not today. It'll have to be said sometime in the 50s. I don't know if people remember that. It's already too long back for people to understand. Okay. Memories of Underdevelopment is a brilliant film, I think, simply because he's dealing with post-Marxist society. Okay. And he's doing a very clear-eyed thing. There is no propagandist element at all in Memories of Underdevelopment, which is by Alia. Nothing, actually. And it seems to be, my own interpretation is, it seems to be from the viewpoint of the same class he's criticizing. It seems to be an upper class, a bourgeois, representation of the last days of the bourgeoisie. Okay, so there is some sympathy for that rotten, the hero is rotten, but there's some sympathy for that rotten hero in the film. Okay. Cargo 200 is, as I said, told from the viewpoint of a dissatisfied man in the present, talking about dissatisfied moment of the past, when there was already some kind of nostalgic thing about communism. He was trying to make a movie to show them what communism really was like. Cargo 200, I mean, you show it to a convinced communist, to a committed communist, like somebody in the CPM, it's likely to cause a riot, I think. It's savage. There's no other way to describe it. Okay? What is that you was asking? I wanted to ask me, Mohammed.
So what I wanted to ask you was, when we see the Russian films, Eisenstein films, you know, like it is propaganda, but for people who believe in it, is not. And the last session we spoke was about history. So I'm just curious as to where do we draw that line, whether it's propaganda or.
I don't think. See, I don't think too many people will be disagreeing. Look, let us say something, right? If you take something like Mother, Gorky's the mother of Pudovkin, you take something like Battleship Potemkin, you take something like October, it is propaganda. Nobody will say it's not that. The point is, these films are not only concerned with portraying the past. Okay, they are actively engaged in reconstructing the present according to a certain thing, and they felt that art and literature and cinema was intended to reconstruct that present. Now, whatever you may have heard in cinema, you will actually look at it, you will find that there was not such a huge audience for Eisenstein cinema. Okay, these pioneers of Russian cinema, there was no huge audiences from the working class. The working class wanted old ways of representation. They did not want Eisenstein kind of representation. These films were actually shown for some minority. In some way, he was experimenting with form, with doing various things. He was trying to actually produce a revolutionary cinema. In painting also, there was this thing called the constructivists. I don't know if you heard of the constructivists. Okay. I think it is slightly pre-revolution. So they went on, Malevich, you find many of these guys. They were actually trying to make some Tatlin. They were trying to do some kind of thing, trying to, bring about artistic revolution of some sort in the service of the revolution. They were, of course, I think they were pre-revolutionary, but they were inspired by the same revolutionary. See, their entire thing was that the revolution is going to change perceptions. It will create an avant-garde. Okay, but actually, when the revolution actually relies on the working class and a fairly uneducated, boorish working class. See, finally, who wields power? Which is the revolutionary class which is going to bring power? It will be boorish, right? It is not going to be ultra sophisticated, bearers of the revolution. There'll be boorish people who can wield guns, who can go around using their fists, who can do this kind of thing. They are the people who bring usher in the revolution. So finally, the political power, whatever the intellectuals may want, whatever the artists may want to have faith in the revolution, whatever artifacts they may produce in support of the revolution is finally accomplished with the aid of boors, savages, virtually that, right? They are the ones who go out on the street, right? They are the ones who go out on the street. They are the people. It's always there. The rank and file of any revolutionary thing, or even of the fascists, okay. See, it's not that the fascists didn't have an artistic model in front of them. They had artistic models in front of them. Wagner and this and that. But the ruffians who populated the SS, the SA and all these were hardly that category, right? Okay. They were not the guys who listened to Beethoven. They were not the guys who listened to Wagner. They were not the guys who listened to the kind of, that kind of stuff, right? They were basically boors. Okay. This is what happens. The revolution is finally brought about by a bunch of uneducated rabble. That's the basic army of the revolution will be that. But what happens is at the forefront, there will be some attempt, if it's like the Russian Revolution, there will be an attempt to produce some kind of artistic thing. But if you actually look at this cinema of Battleship Potemkin, that's why I've called this the experience of political change, right? Okay. If you look at Battleship Potemkin, you look at the thing as cinema, does it really convey the experience of political change? No, it doesn't, right? So you can't rely on that to tell you what political change was like. For example, October is about the storming of the Winter Palace, right? I believe historically there was no storming of the Winter Palace. There was no storming at all. Okay, can you believe that? Okay, when you go to Russia today, I've been to Russia, so generally I've been several times. You generally there, what do they talk about? What was Lenin's revolution? It was a coup d'etat. Lenin seized power after arming the workers, the Soviets, the trade unions. He armed them and he seized power unconstitutionally. There was a March April Revolution, and there was an November Revolution, right? The April Revolution was a regular revolution in the sense that there was power was widely held. Subsequently, Lenin came back, and Lenin seized power through his muscle, okay, and exiled everybody. Everybody went away, and they got hold of it. He had his own theory for that only the working class, dictatorship of the proletariat, and all that. But he didn't have majority. He seized power. Okay, so is that answer okay for you?
Yes,
okay.
That does answer.
Yeah, that's okay. So let's go to the next thing. We'll go to the first one, which is to do with Quemada. We have to look here at what is called decoloniality and postcolonial. Okay. Now, decoloniality is a term which is used is different from postcolonialism. Postcolonial is the condition that former colonies are in after colonists leaving their culture still highly influential. See, what happens in post-colonial societies is that the elite, which was there in the colonial era, that same elite will somehow assume power. Like you had the ICS became the IAS. The British Army, for example, the British Army, okay, British Indian Army became the Indian Army, right? Okay, the generals there. I'm not saying it's a bad thing or a good thing, but the point is this. For example, when they wanted to bring the Indian National Army into India after the thing, there is what is the closest to revolutionary thing. There was resistance. Nehru did not want it. I'm not saying it should want it. We don't know exactly this. This ideology must not corrupt the whole problem is that an army must be a professional army would be the way somebody like Nehru would see it. And I would agree, go along with that. If you introduce, for example, if you had made Netaji Subhash Bose, supposing he survived the war, survived the independence, when Netaji Subhash Bose had become, had been made defense minister, just imagine what would have happened, right? He was he had actually fought the war, he had fought the British. If he had come there, he would have brought in certain ideological perspective there, whereas actually post-colonial society is actually a smooth continuation of the colonial thing, right? It cannot be taken that the Marxists would say, that is why the Marxists, people like Ritwik Ghatak, people like Mrinal Sen, all of them make fun of this bourgeois revolution or whatever. But the point is, do they have anything to offer? Okay. The question is that bourgeois revolution is there. Okay. That's the kind of thing. So the point is, decolonization is different. Okay. Decolonization tries to uproot the native culture. Okay. The theorists of decolonization would be something like Fanon, Franz Fanon. Have you heard of him? Wretched of the Earth, Fanon, from Martinique. Okay, he was a psychiatrist. He wrote about the psychiatric thing of the colonization. He meant many things he did. For example, he said if in a colony, in an African society, if you show a Tarzan movie, okay, and a black man in Senegal or someplace is watching a Tarzan movie, he will be completely for Tarzan. He will identify with Tarzan against the blacks, against the apes and all that. Okay. But the same man goes to Paris and he watches the movie in Paris. He'll become conscious of the fact that the whites around him are viewing him as the blacks in the Tarzan movie. Okay. So the question is, the entire thing will change. That is, his viewership of the Tarzan movie will become oppositional in some way. Okay. So he did all this. Okay. Now, this film, Quemada or Burn, is made from this... from the Fanonian perspective. Fanon made this movie called The Wretched of the Earth. He's made written another book. He's written another book called, he's a writer. He made another book called, I think, Black Faces, White Masks or so, which generally tells you exactly what I'm talking about, right? It's a critique of post-colonial regimes, right? That means the original regime was just replaced by somebody there. Like you have in Xala. Xala that's the difference between Quemada and Xala. But Quemada is actually, it's a... Okay, it's written from a theoretical perspective. Okay, Quemada was made in 1969 from a Fanonian perspective as an allegory of Vietnam. Okay, in the island in the Caribbean called Quemada that grows sugarcane, it's controlled by the Portuguese using slave labor. A British agent, William Walker, arrives there, helps the mulatto upper class seize power by engineering a slave revolt. I won't go into this. I presume all of you have seen how it goes into this thing. He chooses a man, okay, called Jose Dolores, and creates a situation by which he becomes a leader of the Black Revolt. But when freedom is obtained, Jose Dolores cannot hold on to it. Okay, He surrenders the thing and goes off into the wilderness. Okay, and the mulatto class seizes power there, or not seizes power. It's installed as the government there, but it continues. In fact, Sanchez, Teddy Sanchez, who's the president, says, "I regard myself as a white man, not as a mulatto." He says that. So all his values are white. Okay, so the point is this: they have abolished slavery, but the point is that the same blacks who once slaves are now are there as workers, and they're working virtually for the same kind of thing. They're still in the same kind of poverty. There is nothing new which has happened to them. They're living in poverty, right? Because the entire island is now in the control of the British sugar company. That's the basic thing. Now here I think he uses Brando uses a metaphor there. He talks about horse, and he talks about marriage, and he talks about about would you rather have, we're not talking about love, we're talking about installing somebody, paying for a service, or then he says that's I mean, I don't know how many you will approve of this thing, but this is what he says. But the question is, the point he's trying to make is that the slavery is not something, abolishing slavery, like for example, bonded labor was abolished in India. No. India had slavery. It had slavery. It was abolished in the British Parliament in 1824 or 27 or some such thing, right? But there was slavery in India. There were slave markets in Goa. I mean, this is recorded, right? This is there. And so the question is that though slavery was what is called bonded labor, right? Okay, that is, you make out you make out a deed saying, I borrowed so much money from you, until the money is repaid I will, and you put usurious rates of interest and you bind that person. Indira Gandhi abolished bonded labor, but even now, see, for example, what's happened, I mean, even now there is no bonded labor per se, but one doesn't really know the conditions under which the poorest of the poor live, right? When you have something like Enriga, okay, it's a good thing, like you're actually government is employing, it can't be. So obviously there is it's gradually easing off. But the point is that the abolition of slavery does not guarantee that slave conditions will not prevail in some kind. You may call it voluntary labor, you may call it whatever, but the point is that end of slavery, where they're chained and they're taken down, does not guarantee the kind of conditions of free labor, right? It doesn't guarantee that. There are binding forces of various kinds, okay? Okay. So then this is the story of Kemada, okay? Now, 10 years later, Walker is called back, and then there's a revolution going on, okay? British come. Now, the point is that it's they want to burn this entire thing of burning and destroying, okay, is basically a metaphor for Vietnam War. Vietnam War did that, okay? You uproot people from villages under coercion. You move them to refugee camps. This is basically the Vietnam strategy the Americans used. That is, you call them liberated villages. You move them to refugee camps because the guerrillas work from within these villages. They have support there. You will find this in I think where is the thing? I think if you go to many of these places in Laos, in Cambodia, all these places, but mainly in South Vietnam. Because you didn't know who was the rebel, you didn't know who was the government, the loyalty was very much in question. Okay. Okay. Now the question is this is the basic thing. When the point is, okay, the point is that the problem. It's a brilliant film in terms of its technique, the way it's shot and all that. But it looks like Jose Dolores has read Fanon. Okay. It's as if he's aware of Fanon, he's aware of all the Marxist arguments. Where did they come from? Okay. So, because, what Pontecorvo is doing in this film is to put, whatever he knows from politics into the mind of this revolutionary leader. So the point is, it doesn't portray the experience. Okay. And look, this whole business of, okay, this whole business of it is better to know where to go and not know how than to know how to go and not know where. You remember that line he says? I don't know if you followed this line. This is basically you're assuming that a new government which comes to power, a revolutionary government, will know where to go. What would this man do? Now, if you take something like Robert Mugabe in Zimbabwe, formerly Rhodesia, if you look at Rhodesia, Zimbabwe, Robert Mugabe came. The society was not equipped. It became chaotic. There was famine. There was not food. There were food riots. There was this. We were not able to control it all. What would Jose Dolores have done if he had come to power? Okay, how would he negotiate? Would he nationalize the cane fields? Sugar has to be produced at a certain price, right? At a certain cost. It can't. The cost cannot exceed that, right? It's not. I mean, you know very well. This your cargo 200 is giving you example what happened in the Soviet Union when you nationalized everything. Okay, of course, that was several decades. They nationalized everything and they said you produce this, you produce that. You produce various things on where it led actually. Okay, so the point is this Kemada, what it does is it takes this utopian logic. Okay, the question is, it's as if revolutionary impulse itself, revolutionary impulse itself will somehow make the territory or whatever the nation viable as a political proposition, as a revolutionary proposition. Okay, so the question is, my dissatisfaction with that film. It's like a textbook, and the point is this. Okay, he made this movie, of course, when communism was not. It was before the end of communism. It was done with a certain perspective, but we can't take this thing anymore. Okay, this kind of thing, of a utopian thing. Is this utopian thing of a perfect society? When you have a perfect society, which you are guaranteed that because your sentiments of the people who come out of there is perfect. Look, we can say, okay, that when India came out of colonization, the sentiments of leaders was good by and large. We'll assume that it was good, right? They couldn't have accomplished what they did, but where did they go? How far did were they able to go? Okay, they were not able to implement land reform. They were not able to make the public sector effective. They were not able to. In fact, corruption went up. Just look at this various things that happened to India after independence, right? If you look at it, it's the same problem. Okay, there it doesn't mean that because you're blessed with some revolutionary. I mean, you come out of a violent thing. Look, just let's also look at this, right? Who bears the burden of culture in any post-evolutionary society, right? It'll have to be borne by the elite. If you actually hand over culture, you hand over literature, you hand it over to the peasant to decide what is good literature and bad literature. You hand it over to the working class to decide what is good literature and bad literature. You can't do it, right? There have to be museums, there have to be this, there have to be things, there have to be some revolutionary thing, there has to be an elite, right? Russia, in fact, the scientific, let's look at it straight away, okay? There has to be a scientific elite, right? You have to compete with the world. There has to be economics. There has to be sociology. There has to be thought, right? If you start giving everything into the hands of the end, all that will have to be cultivated by the elite, right? So this is the case. So this entire thing, where is the elite going to come from? Are they all going to be former slaves? Where is the elite going to come from? Are they going to bring about industrial revolutions? Are they going to bring about new methods of things? How are they? Don't you need people? Don't you need people with know-how? Don't you need people from some class different from that? There's one movie all of you should see. I don't know if you can get hold of it. You just see it's a satire on Soviet society immediately after the revolution. It's called Heart of a Dog. It's a TV film, 2-part TV film. Okay, Botko is the name of the director. It's savage, again, satire. But it's satire, it was made much later, probably. Black and white film. Heart of a Dog. I would recommend that you see it. Okay. And I also recommend, when I talk about, I'll talk about that later. Okay. Heart of a Dog, right? Just see this. It should be available. It's brilliant. It's hilarious. Absolutely hilarious. Where a dog is given the pituitary glands of a human being, and that human being happens to be a criminal. So dog grows up into being a man, becomes some stunted man with revolutionary impulses, which is actually the scum, actually. Okay. So it was, and then he starts throwing his weight around and all that. You see this film called Heart of a Dog. It's been written by this Bulgakov, who's a satirist. But rather than read the book, I would recommend that you watch this movie. It's in 2 parts, black and white. Okay. If you can get hold of it, I would recommend it. Okay. So this is my understanding of it. Okay. How does a complete transformation of revolution of colonial society come about? How does that happen? Can you replace after all? You must let us take India itself. Could a revolutionary government look? The Marxists in India were extremely dissatisfied with the Congress regime, with the elite coming in. What did they have in place? Did they have anything in place? Would they have given the entire thing of culture thing to music and everything? Would they have said, would they have supported, shall we say, the end of music because it's produced under a caste system, it's produced under feudal connections, under thing of patronage by zamindars? You have thrown away your classical music and they installed with the popular music. What would they have done? When you look at it, when you look at it, there is no way of getting away from the elite. This is my thing. That finally culture will have to be in the hands of the elite. Okay, this is the way. I don't see how, a solution, which is why somebody like Pontecorvo, who's made this movie and times, and there was a lot of faith in the revolution, because before they understood that the Soviet system was a colossal failure. Okay. Fortunately, the Soviet Union protected culture, they protected education. Okay, they protected that. Okay. And the film schools, the best film schools are in Russian film schools. They protected that. But the point is, in spite of that, the industrial thing, the protected science, they had scientific thing, they protected sport, they did everything. Still, it was a failure. Because industrial production dropped, everything dropped. Okay. So, okay, that's all about Queimada. Any questions about Queimada? Yeah. About this film, about the whatever I've said so far? Did it make sense what I said? I don't think it's very difficult. These are not difficult films in any way. They're just sort of, shall we say, talking about a certain sort of portrayal of certain situations. Then let's move on to the next one. We'll go to this next film called Xala. Okay. This is made by Usman Sembene. It simply satirizes post-colonial society. Okay. It has no... it satirizes. As I said, I don't want to go to the story. El Hadji is a businessman and he's getting married for the third time. Okay. He is, because of his, he's afflicted by impotence because he is, somebody puts a curse on him, the halak. Okay. And he's a crook actually, in the sense he's running a business. He's selling off rice in the black market or something. He's defrauding people. Okay. Pictures of beggars are walking out without legs, wandering about. One man has got his money from I think it becomes stolen, and that pickpocket becomes a member of the Chamber of Commerce. Okay. The important thing I found very interesting is that there's always some white men hanging. We're not sure that they're white men, right? There seem to be some white advisors. There's DuPont something, he says, one character with the long hair and the mustache, right? He's a white man. I don't know, long ago, 25 years ago, I was working I joined the bank I was working in the bank for a long time, 25 years or so. So when I was there early, I joined there, I was working as a field officer or so, small scale industries. There was this industrialist to throw parties, okay, to bank officials. And there was one party, some industrialist called he was a chairman or something of some company. I forget the name of the company, right? Some chap who was with me told him, this guy, this chap is he's not chairman of any company. This guy just picks up some white men here and there who are going about. He'll put them and give them all kinds of, I don't know how far it's true. Okay. Okay. So this is what he told me. I don't know how far it's true, right? I don't know how far this thing is true. But this is basically what the guy told me. But the important thing is these white men. I don't know, in India you have this thing, colonial thing. That any European, any white man, American in India, that thing is still there, right? They've got a sort of, they've got an aura about them. They can get to places, they can have interviews with anybody. So it's basically that in a post-colonial society, anybody who mimics the colonizers in some way, who has this position of the colonizers, who occupies that position of the colonizers, will somehow, the fact is that he's got this, in fact, I'm seeing that DuPont somebody, I don't know if he's a white man. He's always hanging around, right?
I think he was a Portuguese, sir. Correct me if
I don't know. Yeah, he was probably the manager of the bank. Yeah, but why would he hand around there? I'm not sure why he's appointed as, what exactly that. The Chamber of Commerce. He probably no. I don't think he was a member of the bank, was he? I think he's a Chamber of Commerce. He's replaced by this guy, right? That the other guy, right? Other crook replaces him. Yeah. So I'm not so sure. Why would he? If he's a president of a bank, he'll go back to the bank. Why is he? He was shown. I know the first thing. He was, I think, in the Chamber of Commerce, not so much a bank. Do they show the inside of a bank? I think the only time
I barely remember, sir.
The only time they show the inside of a bank is when he goes for a loan, right? Is El Hadji goes to the bank for a loan. Then they show the thing
Yeah.
when he wants a large loan to pay off something. That's the time they show the bank. Otherwise, it's all
Mm-hmm.
Chamber of
Mm-hmm.
Commerce. Yeah, probably
Mm-hmm.
Chamber of Commerce is the thing, right? Yeah, it's probably Chamber of Commerce. But the point is, he looks like a white man. Then he comes back later on. He becomes advisor. He's always hanging out somewhere. He's always there. We don't know what function he's performing. You come here, you come there. I'll come there. You meet there. That sort of thing. What is exactly the advice he's giving? The expression I found it very interesting. Looking at his expression when this galata is going on here between these people, okay, the hala and this and that within the Chamber of Commerce itself, the expression on his face is very interesting. What exactly the expression on his face watching that guy DuPont do something, okay? So that I found very interesting, okay? So this is the thing, okay? But and one interesting thing I found about the film is there is no indication that hala is a superstition, right? It's true in the sense that the first hala is given by some, shall we say, cheated person is given him one hala, and he's cured of it by some other hala. But when the cured of it by another fellow, by witch doctor, but when he cures him and the check bounces, he says you take it back and gives him back the hala, and finally has to go back to somebody else and he has to be. So that thing of that the hala is a superstition is never there. Okay, that's interesting. Why is
Yeah.
there no? I think there is some fundamental thing that this so-called superstition of witch doctors is not superstition. Okay, that would be the post-colonial way of looking at it. In India, it would be automatically become a superstition in some way. Okay, because India is that the
Yeah.
rational
Yeah.
thing they would do that. But there in this place that superstition, it's not shown as a superstition. It's shown as genuine that the witch doctor is actually capable of removing somebody's the curse, right? That curse is genuine.
Yeah.
Okay, that is what it said there.
So I
Okay,
don't know if this gets resolved in the final scene, sir, where they all spit on him. I don't know.
there's no. Let's say, man from actually, are you actually sure that the man from actually cured from impotence? You sure about it? And I don't think the film shows has any doubt at all, right? Has any doubt? I think in the last thing it's taken for granted that he's going to do it. Look, there is some faith, except that the rich fellow who does it first time doesn't do it. But when he goes to the tribal thing, that guy is a local fellow who's recommended by the president. I like the fact that he's always called president, right? They don't say what president of what, right? Okay, he's president. Mr. President, Mr. President, he could be president of anything. That is another characteristic. I've come across this. The chairman of the Employees Association will be called chairman. Okay, he won't be called chairman of the Employees Association. Okay, he'll be called president. He'll be called president. He'll be called chairman. Okay, I know my father was a lawyer. I know that some panchayat, right? Panchayat in some village close to Bangalore. That guy, the head of that panchayat, was the chairman of the panchayat. He used to say, he used to come home, he used to ring up and he used to say, chairman has rung up to my father. Okay. The chairman. Now the question is, what chairman of what? He's some chairman of some village panchayat somewhere. Okay. But he refers to himself on the phone as chairman. Okay. So this is the same thing. President, chairman, these are in societies. They like these designations. They prefer not to, and not only that, when they retire, I've come across this happening. When they retire, they're still referred to as chairman by their acolytes. Okay, this happens quite actually. I don't know. Indian society, I mean, is ripe for this kind of satire, but it's never made of satire like this on post-colonial thing. I don't know. I mean, look, I'll tell you now. Of course, we live in a very different kind of society. There's a lot of wealth, huge amount of wealth, and it's also legitimately earned by many people, rich and all that. It's no longer, that thing of the post-colonial elite. A lot of the very filthy rich people are not even Anglophone. Okay, in many ways, they're not Anglophile. They're not Anglophone. There are a large number of such people. But I would say to get an idea about India was in the 50s. I would suggest you look at a film by Pasolini. I don't know the name of the movie. There's a documentary by Pasolini about India. It doesn't matter. I don't think it's subtitled. I don't think subtitles will be available also. But just a picture of the kind of people who are present on the streets in India. They interview some people. Obviously, they wouldn't be able to. Masi Sahib. Masi Sahib, yeah, he did some such thing. Again, yeah, Masi Sahib was some kind of thing, yeah. But it was, the problem with Masi Sahib, in my opinion, is it was a film made based on a novel which is told from the white point of view. Okay. What is the name of the guy who wrote that? Mr. Johnson? Joyce Carey. Joyce Carey is white, right? Joyce Carey is white, and that, yeah. So it is told from a white perspective. which is that slightly warped thing in Masih Sahib. It's slightly warped, okay? It's as if this a white man, the character is seen from the perspective of a white man. I don't think that's a legitimate perspective in a post-colonial cinema to see things from a white perspective. You have to see from an Indian perspective, where did the white man leave us? So the question is, when Masih Sahib is looked at from the white perspective, there's something fishy about that. I wouldn't recommend that movie because it's giving you the wrong perspective. Okay, what we are talking about here is the perspective of the brown man, of the colored man. Okay, who inherits colonial power. That's what we're talking about. So we go to the next film. The next film is called Memories of Underdevelopment. Okay, it was all of you have seen this. I think it's a brilliant film, absolutely brilliant film, because it makes almost no attempt at propaganda of any sort. Okay, the film was made in 1968, set in the 1961 and 62, shortly after the Cuban Revolution of 1959. Okay, the main character is a guy called Sergio, who belongs to the pre-revolutionary bourgeoisie, who decided to stay on. Okay, he's decided to stay on. It's a revolutionary society, and all the people have left, leaving him behind with his apartment block. And apartment block has been rented out. He's getting some rental income from it. Okay, he is sophisticated and Europhile, and he looks at the fleeting bourgeoisie with contempt, although he sees Cuba as an underdeveloped society. Why do you think he's a Europhile? Is there why not an American fire? There is a certain anti-American slant also in the film, isn't there? But there's no anti-European slant. What do you think? I mean, I was very impressed by, I was very sort of, there's quite a savage attack on Hemingway. Okay. But at the same time, there are a number of things here. Okay, let's go along systematically. Okay, it's docu-fiction. Okay, it is made part documentary, a fictional thread imposed upon actual happenings in Havana. The fiction is chiefly seduction of a working class girl. Okay, he's being taken to court for rape and being acquitted. That's basically it. Okay, this fellow is a nasty piece of work. Let's look at Sergio. He's not an admirable fellow. He has complete contempt for that woman. He virtually plays with her, uses her like a toy, but strictly by the book, in the sense there is nothing he does in the film which is criminal. He speaks the truth in court, right? Okay. His contempt for her. And that class, he shows his thing for the class. And he says, you're not liberated. And when he uses the word liberated in that thing, when the family comes, and the family says, don't talk like a revolutionary. We know what you are. You're not a revolutionary. You're a petty bourgeois, no, not petty bourgeois, the pre-colonial bourgeoisie just stayed behind, because going to America, he finds America crass. Okay. There's something about a lot of Indians, they find America crass. They'll have to go somewhere. They'll have to hobnob with some roughnecks or something. You'll have to go. If you go to some, I don't know how many of you, I would see your own relatives and all in America or whatever. Okay. They generally hang around in their own, pockets of their own influence, their own groups. They discuss Indian food. They listen to Indian music. They build Indian temples. They have that sort of thing. I don't know if it is always the case, but the fact that he has contempt for all those who are leaving and going off to America, but they'll have to work. See, this thing about this fellow is he does not want to work. Okay, he is happy living on rents. He knows that 13 or 14 years he can live on these rents, and that's enough for him. He's not going to think beyond 13 or 14 years. Okay. 13, 14 years, he's going to get rent from apartment. He's going to have a good time in Cuba. Maybe after that, he'll think in terms of going to America, whatever, but he's not going to work. In fact, I think he's an extremely intelligent fellow. He seems to have been called a genius when he was a boy, but he's generally wasted his time. He's generally having a good time. Okay. This context of the film is between the Bay of Pigs episode, when Kennedy tried to get some Cuban emigres to act as soldiers and invade their own country. Okay. Bay of Pigs and the Cuban Missile Crisis. Okay. These two. It's between these two, right? This guy is decadent. The point is, one point, I don't know, he has some savage things about Hemingway. He says some really nasty things about Hemingway, right? You remember that thing? That Hemingway's servant is there, is showing people around talking about Hemingway. And what's her name? That other Elena, his girlfriend or mistress or whatever, his lover or whatever. She is refers to Hemingway as Mr. Way. Okay, he thinks hemming and way are two different words. And I find interesting that when he goes to the bookshop, did you see what book he buys? What book he looks at? Did you see? He
Was
goes
it
to a bookshop.
was it American influence?
Now, what book
I
does he
was,
pick up? Do you anybody remember what book he picked up? I was very interested. He goes to this thing, English language book. What is the book he picks up? Lolita, right? He picks up Lolita. He doesn't pick up an American writer. So your Lolita is Russian. It is something else. Okay, it's not revolutionary Russian, but it's also the kind of, it gives you some kind of, it's an extremely, what is the word I would use? I don't know how many of you have read Nabokov, but Nabokov is an aesthete, right? He's an aesthete. He's the life of an aesthete. He would rather not work at all. He would stay in a hotel room and write, from a viewpoint of something, he was an aesthete of some sort, right? This guy, this Sergio, is some kind of aesthete like that. He's highly intelligent. He's gone to seed. He wants his relationship with this woman. He takes her to advantage of her. And he's more or less sure that he's going to lose the case against this woman, right? But what happens is the court, one thing you can be sure about the judges are not, they're all part of the bourgeoisie, right? Okay. You cannot replace the bourgeoisie. You cannot replace, after the revolution, you cannot replace the judicial system with uneducated peasantry. Okay. There has to be an educated system. They'll have to rewrite the constitution in some way. But obviously, there is some the bourgeoisie in, sitting as judges there. So he gets away. There is no thing against him. Okay. No charge against him. But the important thing I found is that, okay, Sergio, though he's a rotter, he's an aesthete. I would call him a rotter in a, by all logical things, he's an aesthete. He places himself above everybody else. He uses that girl for whatever. Of course, he presents her with this, use the dresses of his wife. He doesn't even spend money on her, whatever. And her family has complete contempt for her. And the family is shown as a working class family of a very different, level from his own. You can see that the actors also act like working class. Okay, they're working class actors. His own thing is very different, right? His own thing, class is very different, right? So what I found interesting is that Alia himself came from an upper class background, right? He is probably a kind of a person who had a novelist on whose novel this movie is based is also the class. So there is a certain thing of looking at shall we say, a revolutionary government in a certain way. A certain way. Early days, they haven't got full control over the system. They're still fumbling around. They're introducing something. But also you must remember that Cuba was within the ambit of the American thing. And America was always dangerous, right? America still got a part of Cuba which it's owning, like Guantanamo Bay and all that. It's still got. So the question is that Cuba is not like Soviet Union where there's really nobody judging you. If Cuba goes around executing, bourgeoisie or whatever, it starts, they're using the kind of measures that Stalin did. Okay, you can be sure that it will be invaded. Okay, it's largely because they've behaved themselves rather than having heads chopped off. That in some way that America has not had this kind of a handle by which to do that. Not that they would. I'm not saying that they would have done it if they had the chance. But the point is that this film comes out of a post-evolutionary society, but it is portraying this post-evolutionary society in an extremely reasonable, extremely plausible, credible way. So finally, though this man is a rotter and is criticized for the way he treats that woman and all that, that basically we cannot help admiring the fact that he's cultured. He has culture. He's an aesthete. Okay. He's the elite. He belongs to a certain intellectual elite of some sort, right? Who reads literature, who knows this. He does not believe the fact that he's treated somewhat sympathetically. He would know a museum. He would know this. He would know all the artifacts. He would have some thing of culture. Okay. All that he would have, right? So that there finishes this thing of memories on there. Any questions up to here?
Sir, I just wanted to add one thing, sir.
Please.
I feel that the way this film has portrayed both personal and political The fusion of both of them is very wonderful. I
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
know
It's
how
actually
many
told from the
films
personal
manage to
viewpoint.
do that.
Yeah. I think that is the way that an Indian could deal with the colonial thing. Only question is now, all people who remember the 50s, for example. I don't remember the 50s at all, right? Anybody who remembers the 50s, and I'm an old guy, okay, but I can't remember the 50s. Now the question is, all of them, all those people who remember the 50s are dead. No longer any account of it. There is no worthwhile fiction even. Okay, no diaries member worthwhile. You can't even recapture the 50s, and it's not so long back, right? We don't know how independence was experienced on the streets. You've got some films division stuff, maybe some documentaries, nothing really. They just show people running and some people with the solar topies chasing them with sticks. That's all we've got now, right? That's the only evidence we've got of the freedom movement. Gandhi walking along slightly fast with a stick and some people walking behind him. This is basically it, all we've got. How do we know how it was experienced? I think, but if you look at Hindi cinema, at least I've done that in my book called Seduced by the Familiar. I've tried to look at it. How Hindi cinema looked at independence, right? How it looked at independence. For example, how Nehru was looked at, how Patel was looked at. You can get, yeah, yeah, correct. There's no conscious attempt to perpetuate it in any art form at all. Nothing. And we don't want it. There's all this stuff, about Gandhi did this, Gandhi. See, basically, this entire thing is fake. This entire mythology around the freedom struggle is fake, right? The guys who actually, they look, let's face it, right? India got freedom. Okay. The British were not resisting. The British were ruined after the war. Okay. Okay. America wanted Indian markets opened up. Roosevelt wanted Indian markets opened up. So he did everything possible to sort of, he didn't want Roosevelt was very strongly in favor of India becoming independent. They wanted markets for themselves, right? To buy this, to buy that, And incidentally, where would it come from? Where would the money come from? Where do you think money would come from in India if the markets were opened up? Indians could buy stuff. Where would it come from? Where does it come from in Africa? Where does money come from? Some idea? I mean, this is a basic thing. Obviously, natural resources, right? The natural, whatever happens, the poorest of the country will have some natural resources, right? They'll have some minerals, they'll have aluminum, they'll have bauxite, they'll have something, okay, copper, they'll have something or the other, okay? Or they have agricultural produce like sugar cane, right? Now, nobody would bother about Kemada if you didn't have sugar cane. The sugar is a commodity which everybody wants, right? In mineral-rich countries like India is not really a mineral-rich country, but it has minerals, okay? Iron or something, bauxite, it has all these things, right? It would be able to do that. So the question is, you would buy something, cotton, it would grow rice, so you could export something, you would have some means that way, right? So this is the way, change over this thing. What is the question you asked me, Mohammed? Does it answer your question? Okay.
It does.
Anybody else any other question? Okay. This is basically the thing of revolutionary society. So Cuba also had sugarcane, very important at sugarcane. It has labor. After all, it has labor. Okay. So if you get, I mean, especially when labor is very expensive in the West, if you get cheap labor and you set up garment factories, for example, Bangladesh now seems to have a higher per capita income than India. You know that? Bangladesh is doing very well, largely because
Yes,
of the
yes.
garment industry. I think garment industry has done very well, so Bangladesh is doing very well. So the question is, labor is always able, can be used up, and some fundamental activities can be done. Okay, so that the natural resources, agriculture, minerals, anything minerals will be there. Okay, the minerals, and the question is, given the size of India, there will always be minerals of some sort. Okay, so the minerals would pay for your whatever. So then you could export raw materials, import finished goods. This is the standard way of underdeveloped societies, that you import finished goods at high prices, export raw materials at low prices. This is the basic thing, right? This is the thing. So let's look at Cargo 200. Why are we shy of our own history except reading textbooks? We hardly invoke our own history. Why are we? No, that's a complicated question. I think that basically we don't maintain records. We have no faith, in our history. I don't think we have faith in our history, right? Okay. My own belief is if you look at Hindi cinema, this thing of context, why is it, in spite of the amount of money and time and expenditure, spent on creating a mythology around the freedom struggle, how many movies have we got in India made actually about the freedom struggle? How many are there? Do we know? How many are there? How often does Gandhi feature in an Indian film? And I don't mean, Lagero Ho Munna Bhai, that's it. Okay. Now, I'll tell you one film which was, that's a very interesting question you asked me. There was one film which I saw when I was doing my research for my very first book. There's one interesting book called Anoki Ada. It's an interesting movie. You should see that, right? There is this guy, his name is Lat Saheb. He's a very anglicized guy. He wears a suit. He has a rose in his buttonhole. He's got an interesting thing. He's got a rose in his buttonhole, and he cares for the hero and heroine and a younger brother are orphans. They don't not mention who their parents are. They're just orphans. And this guy who's actually a fellow all wearing a suit and wearing a rose in his buttonhole cares for them, tries to look after them. He's in love. He wants to marry the girl and he wants to bring up the boy or something. And there's another man, a slightly authoritative man wearing a solar topi who also loves both of them. But the point is, who also wants to in love with the heroine. But finally, what does this man with the rose in the buttonhole, anglicized person with the rose in his buttonhole mean? What does it signify? I think I've done it in one of the earlier classes. This thing I must have mentioned it. Nehru, right? He loves children, right? Nehru loved children. He had a rose in his buttonhole, right? Okay. Then you've got this other guy, the solar topi, who's actually authoritarian figure, a very strict figure. It would be Patel. This was made in 1949 or so, this movie, right? So the point here is, why are these two orphans? Anoki Ada? No. I'm not, there must be another thing of the same name. There's one film made in 1949 I'm talking about. Okay. 49. What is this thing of these two being orphans? What does it mean? Why are they orphans? Why are these two young people, why are these, let us take Nehru and Patel, why do they want to look after and why is Nehru equipped to take after these orphans and what does this orphan mean? You get any sense of it? 1949? 48. Okay, 48. Okay, 48, right? Okay. Why are they orphans, right? They are orphans because the father of the nation is just dead. You got me? Okay. So what they're doing is, okay, they are trying to present this whole thing of Gandhi, Nehru, all this thing in the language of shall we say a permanent language, right? Eternal language, everyday sentiments, everything. They are not looking upon it as history. Okay, they're not looking upon it as specifically owing to 1947, right? They're looking upon it as a general thing. Okay, Mother India, for instance, Mother India is about some woman, something. There is no Mother India that is not involved in the freedom struggle. At the end of it, Rajendra Kumar is wearing the garb of a Gandhiite or some such thing. He's wearing khadi. Where was he ever involved in the freedom movement in that movie? Okay, he's not there. He's just romancing some girl is all he's doing. But why? How dare he wear this garb of a Gandhian at the end of the movie? So the point is that your entire thing is to look at the freedom movement, okay, in terms of metaphor, mythology, this, that, okay. Nehru would be Lat Saheb, this chap would be somebody else. Gandhi would be some Yudhishthira or some, it's something like that, right? You put them in some positions. You like to see them in things as the history is an instance of myth, making sense. Okay. So, for instance, something like, this chap, Amitabh Bachchan in Angry Young Man, has been seen by, what's his name, by Sudhir Kakkar as Karna, right? So the Angry Young Man, which is a product of Indira Gandhi's whatever, of marginalized being brought into the mainstream, becomes a thing of Karna. So you're actually digging up mythology in order to find instances for the present. That's the way they do it. So I would say that by and large, we don't keep history, we don't write history, right? We don't, not particularly, we seem to be conscious of some transcendental truth which goes beyond the thing of history, which is immediate. Okay, now let's go along. Okay, up to here. Okay, so our time is there. I won't go through the story of this film. I hope all of you have seen this thing. Okay. This thing of drunken dancing and this and that. Okay. The point is, he's used this horror movie thing of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Has anybody seen Texas Chainsaw Massacre? This movie, from the beginning, actually, this movie, believe it or not, is based on a Faulkner novella. William Faulkner's thing. I think it's called The Wild Palms or something. No, Sanctuary. I think it's called Sanctuary. The name of the novel is Sanctuary. It's supposed to be based on that. He says in the beginning it's based on true events. It's he's just bluffing. That's all. Okay. The point is, in the horror movie, one of the things is one kind of horror movie. Have you seen Deliverance? Have any of you seen Deliverance? Okay. There is this thing of subcultures persisting here. You go along, you go into the woods, you go into the woods and you go in there, you'll find some kind of strange characters living there. Okay. Yeah, I think the Abyss or some such thing. There's one more. Or something like this. Strange cultures living there, horrible, semi-animal, semi-this, semi-that. So all you have to do is in civilized society, go into in the crannies of civilized society, you will find monsters, you'll find that. Okay. What this guy has done is he has used this particular thing to talk about monsters in broad daylight in the middle of Soviet society, is what he's talking about in the last years. This is set in 1984. Andropov is dead. Andropov was supposed to be a good guy, by the way. He was KGB chief. He tried to reform things, Brezhnevira was very, very corrupt, okay. He tried to have jail all these guys, give them prison sentences. When he got too threatening, they poisoned him somehow and killed him off. Okay, that is the basic thing, that Andropov didn't die a natural death. He generally died. He was killed, actually. He was assassinated or some such thing. Okay. Then you've got various things. Okay, you've got this thing of education is not fair, not working. All these youngsters are just busy partying and drinking. This is all, they have nothing to do. Then you've got this enormous edifice, that taka 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 taka, those, trains going. What are they producing? They're not creating wealth at all. You look at the houses. Actually, I've been to Russia. I've been to some of the rural areas of Russia. Okay, I traveled 200 kilometers at 12 o'clock in the night in a taxi in Russia. You go there in the middle of the night, you'll find old cars which are lying beside the road, not being tended. Okay, nobody's driving them. Okay, the dogs barking, the buildings are all peeled off. When you go to Moscow, it's gorgeous. Okay, everything is painted, everything is gorgeous. Moscow is beautiful, it's expensive, it's a thing. St. Petersburg is lovely. You go to even to the outskirts, you'll find this paint peeling, this is there, not tended to. Okay, bricks, everything is in a disarray, that kind of thing. You find, then you know that people don't have money. Okay, people don't have money, they have no. So the question is, the state itself is financially okay because of oil, but the point is there is no generation of wealth. Okay, this is a basic thing. So this entire thing of the collapse of the economy, collapse of this, what happened was that in Soviet Russia, they were asked to produce steel, and they were asked to produce. They were judged. Bureaucrats were judged on the basis of what is the quantity you produced. They found it was easier to produce one gauge of steel rather than others a gauge of steel. But the question is that gauge which was easier to produce was not consumed. So they went on having huge inventories of this useless steel which nobody wanted, right? So the question is, people will use it because you want to fulfill work quotas, you fulfill this, fulfill that, right? This is the basic thing. Okay. So the question is that this guy, education, this chap is the protagonist, Artem, not Artem, his name Artem, is basically professor of scientific atheism from the University of Leningrad. Can you imagine the scientific atheism being a discipline today in any society? Okay. Can you imagine there being a demand for scientific atheism? Okay. But the point is this, that he's going along. You can see his car. It's some third-rate car. Okay, what is that fellow's name? The Alexei, the chap, the bootlegger. Okay, he's trying to make some thing. He's trying to sell something. I mean, this is a. It's actually it's a state of metaphysical collapse, and I think very important in this thing. This alcohol. What do you think is the function of alcohol?
I think it just puts you into a subconscious space. I mean, you're not so conscious.
No, I'll tell you what it is. I think alcohol, okay, is a kind of deadening of the senses against the milieu in some way, right? You don't want to, the milieu is awful, right? Look at the pod, those three guys are there, and the guy shoots one of them, and that fellow is captured later on. Such a seedy looking specimen. He's a worker. That character is working in Leninsk, in one of the state owned companies. You know who guy I'm talking about? Okay. There are three people, right, who are playing cards, and the wife gives a complaint, and this fellow comes along. The Zurov comes along and shoots that guy in the arm or some such thing. And he's they put in a jail where he cheeks this guy and they bash him up. Okay. And that character is a worker. I mean, can you imagine? Just imagine the situation. Can you imagine a worker in a communist state being depicted like this? Look at the portrayal of that worker. What kind of fellow is this guy looking like that? Drunkard. Okay, one day of the week he's sober. He's playing cards or something. He's completely disarray. The whole thing is falling to pieces. You can imagine the working class portrayed in this way. I don't know how a communist, communist sympathizer would deal with the way this chap is portrayed. Okay, but the point is this: how do all of you react to that thing of the woman being abused like that, Angelica? I mean, this is actually there's a thing of misogyny here. Could it be? Would you be frightening?
Terrible.
Actually, it's frightening. But but the point is, you can't see her simply as woman. Okay, not simply woman. She's not simply woman, right? She is a party chief's daughter, local party chief's daughter, right? So what you're talking about is she's been living off it. The dasha is hers. The party's been having a good time. The father is some good for nothing fellow, is occupying some position. He's got some power. The party has no control over the things of the state, right? Okay, the police can do whatever they want. Salam sir, they do the salam sir to the party guy. They do whatever they want. This is the kind of condition that they're in. Okay, that's the basic condition. Okay. So the question is, so she's treated in that way, and the ghastly way in which she's treated, she's soft target, right? She can't do anything. She's acquiescent. You should take off your things, she'll take it off. You do this, does that immediately. She's so bloody acquiescent in everything she does, everything that I asked of her. Okay. She doesn't offer any resistance. But my point here is you can't treat her as woman, that abstraction of woman. Okay. She is to be associated with the party in some way. Party woman, party this thing. Okay. She's a kind of, she's a creation of the party, the privilege produced by the party. Okay. How they would live, that kind of thing. So she's not simply to be treated as woman. So finally, in order to make you understand that she's not woman, that finally the act of vengeance when Zurov is killed is by this Alexei's wife within the party. Yeah, power structure within. They don't show the power structure within the party so much, I think. Is that? I'm not too sure about that. Power structure within the party. They talk about the party. See, there is military. Okay. Artem's brother is military. There is party. There is police, which is called the militia. Okay, which is Zurov. And lastly, you've got the youth, which represent the future of Russia. Okay. This is after Glasnost. After Glasnost, there's a new, oligarchical, all the instruments of the state, plus the future, you got also the future entrepreneurial class. These two chaps are there, no? Valerie, and the other guy who is Artem's son, right? Okay, they meet at the end and they have some kind of partnership. These two represent the future entrepreneurial class. So this movie is virtually placed in 1984. I saw it in 2007 or so, but it's made in 1994. Placed in 1984 or so, 84, and it's predicting a future entrepreneurial class, which come what may, they'll somehow manage to get on. They know what to do. They'll buy themselves out of situations. They will do things. So the question is, the entrepreneurial class, the Russian mafia and all that, are the entrepreneurial class, right? They're part of the entrepreneurship, the Russian mafia. They're making money. Nobody knows how Valery makes his money, right? Okay, nobody knows how he makes his money. He's doing it probably through some drugs, through some smuggling, something. He's making three times as much money as a military colonel, right? Okay, that is the thing. And also there is this question of the older generation, especially people like the military, okay? The military and even this guy, what's his name, this professor, okay? They are not uncommitted. Okay, they're actually sincere in some way to the old system. They're sincere to the old system in some way. But the point is, they can't do anything about it at all. They can't do anything at all. Okay. So the question is, they've been to some utopian ideals they followed, and these guys they've contemptuous of that fellow's city in the sun or some such thing of Alexei, the city of the sun or something like that, or the country of the sun, or something like that. says God is going to bring some city of the sun and then everybody will go to heaven or some such thing is God. That is some utopia. This guy dismisses that as a utopia, but his own thing is also utopia. Okay. And this sense of Alexei, okay, and Zurov having a relationship in the past, as a result of which Alexei is prepared to sacrifice his life. He's not going to claim innocence. Okay, there is some past transaction that personal loyalties are much more thing than loyalty to the state. So actually the state is not powerful at all. Okay, the relationships are all at the individual levels. This is basically what it is. Okay, this is interesting. Another thing which is very important in the movie, which is a thing, okay, is pop music on the soundtrack. His use of music is, I don't know how to put it, okay. It's completely inappropriate, but deliberately so. Okay, it's like, I don't know, you know what is a capacitor, right? A capacitor has got two, plates or whatever, right? Yeah. Plates, right? It's got two plates, and the plates have, because they're separated, in the middle is a non-conductor, it could be vacuum, okay. If they use silence in the middle, the charge builds up because there is no non-conductor in the middle, right? Okay. If they have, I don't try to follow me. There's a building up of charges in these two plates, one positive and one negative. That is the way the capacitor works, right? Now the point is, if the non-conductor in the middle is vacuum, which would be the case, normal case, then it would be equal to silence. You get my point? If the movie had used silence like Bresson, it would be like vacuum being the non-conductor. Here, what he does is he puts pop music, which is like putting plastic or something, right? A non-conducting thing, right? The point is, because it's inappropriate, because his music is completely inappropriate, okay, what happens is it has the opposite effect, okay? It shows, okay, that the youth thing, the milieu, there's a complete dissonance in the milieu, creating a dissonance in the milieu between its manifestation, outward manifestation in some way in terms of pop culture, the immunity of pop culture, I would say, okay, the immunity of pop culture to the milieu, to the politics, to society. It's as if pop culture is completely immune, okay. That I find, there's one more film I think is available, look at it, called Kochegar. Again, Balaban is a great filmmaker, I think. You can see this Kochegar and one more film called Morphine. If you could try to see them, okay, they're available. Okay, I would recommend. This guy is a great filmmaker, except that he drank himself to death. Whatever you see, not the early movies, from, I think, one called Freaks and Men, brilliant film of Freaks and Men. Okay, there is one called War, I think, which is Chechenian War. There is one called of Cargo 200. There's one called Morphine. There's one called Kochegar, and one called Me Too. Me Too is his last film, where he was dying. I think he drank himself to death. He was dying in the last film. So his film is also that. But I'm saying all these other movies, you can check him out. I think he's a master. He's savage, actually. He's darker than Fassbinder, which is saying quite a bit. He's darker than Buñuel, is darker than Fassbinder. Okay, Cargo 200 is darker than anything Fassbinder made, I think. Okay, or Buñuel made. So this is this kind of thing. Okay. And this question of there being no understanding between people. One fellow saying something, somebody saying something else, experiencing, as in Crystal of my car, okay. That mutual understanding implies that there's a nationhood, sense of nationhood, which is drawing people together. Here, that sense of nationhood is absent. So everybody is cross purposes, making money or coping with the state mostly, okay. This is the way this film works, because this is the way it works. So, okay. Did my metaphor of the capacitor work? Did you understand what did it work? I wonder.
Yes.
Yeah, it worked. Okay. So that the question is, it's highly charged because of that music. Okay. He's putting in something which is completely inappropriate. You see Kochegar, the music there is like a jukebox, the music, right? The same tune, repeating one tune, then another tune, then another tune, then the first tune, then the second tune, the third tune again. He uses like a jukebox. I've never seen music used like this in a film before. Okay. Have a look at Balaban. I would highly recommend this guy. I've written about him in my book, 50 Indian Film Classics. I think he's a great filmmaker. Not many people know. He's way better than Ziyagintsev. Okay. Not many people know about him in the West. He's not written about widely. Like Gurman, he's not very well known. Okay. But he and Garman, I think he was Garman's student in VGIK, the film thing. He's a truly great filmmaker, but I think this film is the nastiest film I've seen in my life. I don't think there's anything else which comes close to this. Okay, it makes sense what I said. I think it's not such a difficult session today. I'm basically describing these movies. What are the circumstances in which they've come? The sense of the collapse of the state. It's a metaphor. This is very difficult to portray a collapse. Okay, the sense of a metaphysical collapse. Something is going on. People are mad. Okay, people are drunk. Look here, the individual level, people are drunk. The state has no. Look at that, the scene in which that soldier comes back. His dead body is picked up and put. And then reading out his letters to her. Ghastly, actually. That entire sequence is ghastly. And the drunken mother who's watching some TV or something. Okay. And she's actually a drunkard. Some drunken woman is brought there and put on there. Nobody has done about the theme at all. Yeah, nobody has done this. Okay. Certainly, nobody has talked about it. We are not capable of presenting our own state of affairs honestly, accurately. We are basically, what we do is take the events which are highlighted in the newspaper, okay, illustrate them through appropriate things, right? Now, this new one I've seen, okay, I just saw this. I don't know if you say, this little digression. Have any of you seen this wildlife movie, recent one? What's Sherni? Have you seen Sherni? Anybody seen Sherni? Okay, Vidya Balan Sherni. It's a movie about forest. There are 3 tigers, and one of them is become a man-eater, right? And the guy is wanting to kill it, and this woman trying to save that man-eater. Do you know something? What is the economics of the tiger in India? Okay, I went to this Ranthambore, interesting place, Ranthambore. I went to there. They moved. Okay, completely. Okay, at Ranthambore, I found out that a tiger was shifted from Ranthambore to Sariska. You know why? You know why they shifted the tiger? Okay, Sariska, there are these resorts around Sariska, right? These resorts are owned by businessmen, by politicians. If a tiger is taken from Ranthambore and put to Sariska, there's a possibility of a tiger sighting in Sariska, rentals will go up. Okay? This is the way it works. If there's a possibility of watching a tiger, of seeing a tiger in the wild, right? You can be sure there'll be a huge tourist influx. The agricultural land there will become priceless. Okay, the farmers will be driven out of the business. There is no question of a buffalo or a cow or something being killed by this. Okay, basic thing is their property would be bought up and put up resorts with music, with the swimming pool, with this. And Vidya Balan, what is this Vidya Balan doing there? What is this film? It's being praised by everybody. I've never seen a stupid forest like this. There's no undergrowth. There is nothing. And some guy goes along trying to shoot. He'll shoot any tiger, is it? Will be allowed, is it, to shoot any tiger? What is this? What kind of nonsense is this? Okay. They don't even know what are the conditions of the tiger sighting in India. How much, people go to Ranthambore. I found out Ranthambore, 25,000 rupees. Okay. 30,000 rupees. Have you heard of Katy Perry? Katy Perry, there is a singer or something. She came there to have her wedding there in Ranthambore. If the international jet set comes to Ranthambore because there is a possibility of a tiger sighting, what does it tell you about Ranthambore? Okay. What does it tell you about the economics of the tiger? Right? They don't know anything. They don't bother at all. Okay. This chap has made some movie. The basic thing is the tiger conservation is necessary. The idea is what is it called? It's a noble idea. The tiger should not be killed. Therefore, without looking at the tiger, the economics of the tiger, okay, you don't bother about the economics of the tiger. You don't understand at all that a tiger sighting, just the possibility of a tiger sighting. If a resort fellow can take you around on his elephant or take you around in a jeep and say, sir, 3 days ago, some people saw a tiger in this place. Those people are so excited, they'll stay for 2 more days. Pay 25,000 rupees a day, they'll stay for 2 more days for looking at a tiger, That's the way it works. And the stupid movie they've made, they have no clue at all that this is the way the economics of the tiger works. You can't go around shooting tigers like that. Nobody wants to look at a tiger in the zoo or in a safari park. They want to see it in the wild. That is why Ranthambore is such a hot property. The number of these things, Bandhavgarh, I don't know what it is like in this COVID times. But this is the basic thing, right? We don't watch we don't respond to actual situations. We have some fanciful notion of what should be done about it. The protection of the tiger or some such thing. Okay, that's the way we're going on. So somebody asked that question, I answered that it's digression, but this is the way. Okay. So, but the point is that at least 3 of these movies are not based on theoretical considerations. They are based on actual experience of political change. Chiamata is a brilliant film, technically brilliant, brilliantly shot and all that. It's made by an Italian with no knowledge of colonization 2 centuries ago. He's the guy who made Battle of Algiers, who many of you may have seen, right? The kind of moral story, yeah. It's a kind of moral story, but Ray has not made satire like this, right? Ray has never done satire. This is actually satire. It's satire, and there's no effort at, it's not moral in that sense. Yeah, it's not moral in that sense, right? Okay. There's no moral in the film that this should be the way. It's all everybody's made fun of like that. Even the beggars are made fun of, which is something, okay. The fact that you've got so many legless beggars, and what is this? Society is represented actually, where you don't see normal people at all. They're all on crutches, or they're all beggars, or they're all legless people with polio, or some such thing crawling along, and that sort of. Everybody is a beggar, or everybody is that sort of thing. So you're virtually, by showing, a collection of beggars moving around from here to there, they're representing society at large, traditional society as a society of beggars. Either you've got beggars, okay. Yeah, possibly non-professional actors. Yeah, it would probably. And it was made with this kind of thing. It's basically that. Okay, so African cinema has changed quite a bit. This Mbene thing is not there. There are these white technicians coming, directors, African directors who have studied in French universities and all that. So it's changed quite a bit. So that is that. Yeah. He's sardonic. He's sardonic, but he's not a satirist. And the point is, this sardonic, whatever is sardonic thing is there of Ray, sardonic, ironic way of Ray, there's always, shall we say, some kind of positive thing somewhere. He never shows society as hopeless. If you take something like, not Gare by Ray, I was thinking of in the terms of, what is that film? Janaranya. That's, Janaranya is pretty savage, but it's still, there are still positive things there. It's all not completely negative, but it's as I think as Indian cinema has got. I don't go along with what's his name, Mrinal Sen satires at all. Okay, Mrinal Sen satires is actually utopian. Okay, he comes from He's Mrinal Sen satires are all utopian. Somewhere in some Marxist society will be there. There'll be affirmation of some working class fellow there. There's no possibility of that working class fellow ever seizing power. But that kind of thing, that utopian thing, is always there in the thing. So don't take a satire seriously at all. Okay. But basically, this is the thing. So I don't think anybody has made satire like this in India at all. America, yes, they've done it. I think Altman has done it, but not this savage. I think Balabanam and Fassbinder has done it. I would suggest Fassbinder post-Nazi, there's one called Wild Vessel, I think. Wild Vessel. Try Wild Vessel. It's called Jailbait. It's also called Jailbait. Fassbinder, satire. Very, very dark. Very dark. Almost no redeeming thing at all. Okay. Yeah, Wild Vessel, right? Wild Vessel. Weschel. I think it's one word. It's not two different. Jailbait is the name. Okay. I'll stop here. Any questions? So thank you. Okay.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for joining us. It was a wonderful session, and thank you everyone for joining.